The morning mist clung to the ancient stone walls of Glenmore Highland Retreat like a shroud, and grounds manager Isla MacLeod knew something was wrong. The converted Highland estate, nestled 30 miles south of Inverness, prided itself on absolute tranquility. Guests paid premium rates to disconnect from technology, surrendering all devices upon arrival, but peace had been shattered. "David, Mr. Hartwell?" Isla called, knocking on cabin 7's door. The London pharmaceutical executive had missed morning meditation, unusual for someone meticulously punctual since Friday evening. When no response came, she used her master key. David Hartwell lay sprawled beside his bed, wearing casual clothes. His face was peaceful, but the empty pill bottle on the nightstand told a different story. Isla's hands shook as she reached for the emergency phone. Detective Inspector Sarah Crawford arrived from Inverness 40 minutes later, navigating the winding Highland Road to reach Glenmore. The retreat's isolation made investigations challenging. No mobile signal, no security cameras, no digital footprint. Exactly what stressed executives paid premium fees to experience. "Tell me about your setup here," Crawford asked retreat owner Miranda Walsh as they walked toward cabin 7. Walsh, a former London psychologist who'd bought the estate 5 years earlier, explained their strict no-technology policy. "Guests surrender all devices upon arrival. We lock them in the main house safe. Phones, tablets, everything. Part of the therapeutic process is complete digital detoxification." Walsh seemed genuinely shaken by the death. "David was one of our regulars. 3rd visit this year. Always said it helped him think clearly. He seemed particularly stressed this time, though." Crawford examined Hartwell's body carefully. The empty prescription bottle contained sleeping tablets, not unusual for a high-stress executive, but something felt off about the scene. The pill bottle was positioned too perfectly on the nightstand, and Hartwell's body positioning suggested he'd collapsed while moving toward the door, not while preparing for bed. "Who else is staying here this weekend?" Crawford asked, pulling on latex gloves. 5 other guests, corporate types mostly. They're in the dining hall now, quite upset about the whole thing. The guest list read like a Fortune 500 directory. Besides Hartwell, Jennifer Aldridge, defense contractor CEO, Thomas Blackwood, banking executive, Elena Morrison, whistleblower protection lawyer, Martin Hughes, pharmaceutical compliance officer, and Dr. Rebecca Stone, corporate ethics consultant. Crawford interviewed each guest separately in the estate's oak-paneled library. Their stories aligned suspiciously well. Dinner at 7, meditation at 8:30, in cabins by 10 p.m. "He mentioned work stress," Jennifer Aldridge said. "Thornfield Pharmaceuticals, regulatory compliance issues." Thomas Blackwood added, "David seemed agitated yesterday, kept checking his watch, said he was worried about missing something important Monday morning." Dr. Stone provided context. David asked about corporate whistleblower protections, seemed concerned about timing when executives become legally obligated to report wrongdoing. Crawford noted the pattern. 3 guests mentioned Hartwell's Monday morning anxiety. Dr. James Mackenzie confirmed Hartwell died from a massive zolpidem overdose, 20 times the therapeutic dose, suicide or murder, no middle ground. But the examination revealed troubling details. Traces of sertraline, not his prescription. Bruising on his wrist suggests someone gripped him forcefully. Crawford returned to search Hartwell's cabin more thoroughly as darkness fell over the Highland Glen. Behind a loose floorboard near the bathroom, odd in such a carefully maintained facility, she discovered something that changed everything. A small digital recorder, still warm from recent use. The device contained over 6 hours of covertly recorded conversations from the retreat's common areas, dating back to Friday evening. Crawford listened with growing amazement as Hartwell's secret investigation unfolded. He had been systematically documenting conversations, focusing particularly on discussions about corporate compliance, legal strategies, and regulatory investigations. The recordings revealed a different picture entirely. Rather than strangers seeking spiritual renewal, several guests appeared to know each other professionally and were using the retreat as cover for sensitive business discussions. The clinical trials were compromised from the beginning, Martin Hughes's voice whispered on one recording. We knew the data wouldn't support FDA approval, so we adjusted the methodology. How many patients were affected? Eleanor Morrison's voice responded. Potentially thousands, but the arthritis medication does work, just not as effectively as we reported. Most patients won't be harmed, just less help than they expect. The most damning recording, time-stamped at 9:47 p.m. the previous night, captured a heated whispered conversation between two unidentified speakers in the garden outside Hartwell's window. He knows too much. The SEC filing is due Monday morning. We can't let him destroy everything. Too many jobs at stake. Westbridge employs 1,500 people. There has to be another way. We're talking about murder. Sometimes there isn't another way. Rebecca was right. He won't be reasoned with. Crawford called for specialist audio analysis. Within hours, voice recognition software identified the speakers, Elena Morrison and Martin Hughes, the whistleblower protection lawyer and the pharmaceutical compliance officer, supposedly meeting for the first time at the retreat. When confronted separately, both initially denied any previous relationship, but faced with audio evidence of their conspiracy, Morrison broke first, her professional composure collapsing under Crawford's questioning. Martin contacted me 3 months ago through encrypted channels, she admitted, tears streaming. His company, Westbridge Pharma, was about to be exposed for falsifying clinical trial data on their new arthritis medication. They needed specialized legal advice about whistleblower protections and SEC compliance procedures. Hughes nodded reluctantly when presented with Morrison's confession. We weren't supposed to know each other here. Elena suggested meeting at the retreat, neutral ground, no electronic surveillance, no paper trail. We were trying to figure out how to handle the situation legally, minimize damage to the company, and protect employee jobs. And David Hartwell's involvement? Crawford pressed. Morrison's composure cracked completely. David worked for Thornfield Pharmaceuticals. They were Westbridge's primary competitor for FDA approval of a similar arthritis drug. If our trial data scandal broke publicly, Thornfield would dominate the entire market. We're talking about billions in potential revenue. The investigation took a darker turn when Crawford examined Hartwell's corporate background more closely. Thornfield Pharmaceuticals had indeed been locked in fierce competition with Westbridge for FDA approval of competing arthritis medications. Both drugs targeted the same patient population, but only one would likely receive priority approval and market dominance. But the recordings revealed Hartwell wasn't planning to use the information for corporate advantage. In his final recorded personal notes, made in the privacy of his cabin, he expressed profound moral conflict about remaining silent while patients received potentially dangerous medications based on falsified data. I've spent my career putting profits before people, his voice whispered on the tape, barely audible above the Highland wind. But this time, people could die if I don't act. The FDA needs to know the truth before they approve a drug based on fraudulent trials. I can't be complicit in this anymore. Further investigation revealed Hartwell had been secretly documenting pharmaceutical industry corruption for months, building a comprehensive case that would expose multiple companies. Westbridge was just the beginning. His evidence implicated a network of regulatory corruption involving FDA officials, pharmaceutical executives, and consulting firms. The breakthrough came when Dr. Mackenzie completed his full toxicology analysis. The sleeping medication in Hartwell's system wasn't from his own prescription bottle. The chemical signature and manufacturing batch matched a different brand, one prescribed to Elena Morrison for anxiety related to her high-stress legal practice. The pills were ground into powder and mixed with something sweet, Mackenzie explained, probably dissolved in tea or coffee. He would have tasted nothing unusual, felt drowsy within minutes, and lost consciousness within half an hour. When confronted with this forensic evidence, Morrison confessed to the poisoning, but insisted it wasn't intended as murder. "I didn't plan to kill him," she said, her voice hollow with exhaustion. Martin and I realized David was going to expose everything Monday morning when the markets opened. He had evidence that would destroy not just Westbridge, but several other pharmaceutical companies. Hundreds of people would lose their jobs. Entire research programs would be cancelled. Morrison had ground her prescribed sleeping pills into Hartwell's chamomile tea during the evening social hour, when guests gathered in the main hall for herbal tea and quiet conversation. "I thought he'd just sleep through the night, Mrs. Monday morning meetings, give us time to figure out damage control. I didn't realize how many pills I'd used. I'm not a doctor, I just wanted to buy time." But the final twist emerged during Morrison's formal interrogation. She hadn't acted alone, and her accomplice wasn't Martin Hughes. Dr. Rebecca Stone, the corporate ethics consultant, had actually orchestrated the entire plan. "Rebecca convinced me it was the ethical choice," Morrison explained. "She said sometimes protecting hundreds of jobs and ongoing medical research outweighed exposing one company's methodological shortcuts. She knew exactly which medication to use, how much would be needed to keep David unconscious for days without permanent harm." Dr. Stone had been consulting for Westbridge Pharma while simultaneously offering ethics guidance to other pharmaceutical companies, a massive conflict of interest that would destroy her lucrative consulting practice if exposed. She'd specifically recommended the Highland retreat meeting and coached Morrison through the poisoning process, providing detailed instructions about dosages and delivery methods. Rebecca said she'd handled similar situations before, Morrison revealed. She claimed corporate ethics sometimes required difficult choices, that protecting the greater good meant making personal sacrifices. She made it sound noble, necessary. But Stone had catastrophically miscalculated the dosage, turning intended sedation into lethal overdose. When confronted with Morrison's testimony, Stone attempted to flee the retreat on foot, but the Highland terrain and police roadblocks made escape impossible. The case concluded with Morrison pleading guilty to voluntary manslaughter and receiving 12 years in prison. Stone was convicted of first-degree murder as the scheme's architect and sentenced to life imprisonment. Martin Hughes received immunity for cooperation and became a key witness in the broader pharmaceutical fraud investigation. Westbridge Pharma's clinical trial fraud was exposed to federal regulators, leading to the largest pharmaceutical fine in British history and the recall of their arthritis medication. The company eventually filed for bankruptcy, but independent analysis revealed their drug was actually effective and safe, just not as revolutionary as their falsified data suggested. The irony wasn't lost on Detective Inspector Crawford as she filed her final report from the now empty retreat. A man seeking digital detox had been killed because of what he'd learned through old-fashioned analog eavesdropping. In trying to disconnect from the modern world, David Hartwell had discovered that the most dangerous corruption still happened in face-to-face conversations, even in the most remote corners of the Scottish Highlands. Glenmore Highland retreat closed permanently 6 months later, its promise of peaceful disconnection forever tainted by the reality that some connections between greed, fear, and violence transcend any technology. The estate was eventually sold to a conservation trust and converted into a wildlife sanctuary, where the only sounds are wind through heather and the calls of Highland birds.